Yeah, and I am a research professor at Oslo Met, and I will, together with my colleague Lotte Andersen, give you a brief overview of the Norwegian Barnahus model and some main results from 2 national evaluations we have done of this model. And thereafter, Lotte will talk more in detail about the Barnahus work. Okay. But before I go into the model, I would like to present the other researchers at Norway that are doing Barnahus research. Besides Lotte and me, we also have 2 other colleagues involved, Kari Stefansen and Tonje Gundersen. Both of these have been involved in the national evaluations, and Kari has also, together with Lotte and me, been involved in writing 2 edited books about the Barnahus model that I will present for you later. Before I go into the details of the Barnahus model, I will give an overview of the locations of the Norwegian Barnahus. The first Barnahus in Norway was established in 2007, first as a pilot project, but was quite quickly made into a national service. And the first one was actually established in Bergen on the west coast. We now have 12 Barnahus covering the whole country. And the blue dots on the map are the Barnahus, and the yellow are subunits. So 3 of the Barnahus, have subunits. And this is to compensate for long travel distances. And as you can see, most of the Barnahus are located in the southern part of Norway. And it is especially in the northern part that the long travel distances for the child becomes a challenge. And recently, 1 more Barnahus was opened in the far north to improve the situation. And this new Barnahus is not on this map. And the last Barnahus that was established will especially target the Sami population, and also give advice to the other Barnahus when they get children with Sami background at their Barnahus. So what does the Norwegian Barnahus look like? Well, this is a model for interdisciplinary and co-localized work. The child comes to the Barnahus and meet the professionals there, reflecting the one roof or one door principle, which is kind of a core principle in the Barnahus model. The Barnahus is only used in police reported cases. So a police report is the entry ticket to Norwegian Barnahus. The target group include children under the age of 16, but also particularly vulnerable adults that may have been victims of violence or abuse. These are adults, for example, with mental impairments who need special facilitation during the forensic interview. In my presentation, I will focus on the children today. A fairly new development is that the Barnahus now also offer services to children who have sexual or are suspected to have sexually abused other children. But I will not go into this group either, but instead focus on children as victims, which is the main group. In the Barnahus, the child is interviewed by the police and may also undergo a forensic medical examination. Some children may also receive a forensic dental examination. An important task for the Barnahus employees are to facilitate these activities, as well as to map the child's need for follow-up or treatment. At the Barnahus, the child may be offered short-time psychological follow-up, which Lotte will talk more about. This means that the activities in the Barnahus are organized around two main tracks. The penal track, that basically include all the activities related to the penal case, as the forensic interview and the forensic medical examination. And the other is the follow-up or recovery track, which relates to support and treatment in relation to the child and the child's family. So a balance between these two tracks are necessary for the model to work as a holistic model. The Norwegian model is affiliated in the justice sector, which makes Norway special, at least in a Nordic context. In other countries like Iceland, Sweden, and Denmark, the Barnahus are affiliated in the child welfare sector. The Barnahus staff is employed as civilians in the police, and most of them are social workers or psychologists, but some also have background from the police. While the Barnahus staff have their everyday work at the Barnahus, the other professionals involved in the Barnahus operation, like the police, lawyers, and the doctors, and so on, have their employments elsewhere. So these professionals are summoned to the Barnahus when needed. To give you a closer understanding of the model, I will try to describe how a case proceeds through the Barnahus. As mentioned, it all starts with a report to the police. If the police decides that the child is to undergo a forensic interview, they contact the Barnahus, who sets up a date for the interview to take place. And before the interview, there's a consultation meeting where the interview is planned. And issues in this meeting can be to ensure that the interviewer takes into consideration special needs the child might have, like if the child have language difficulties and the level of development of the child, for instance, and so on. And in this meeting, the police, the Barnahus, and often also the child welfare services participate. It is important to notice that the child welfare services are not part of the Norwegian Barnahus model itself. With this, I mean that the child welfare case is not described as part of the Barnahus operation. The child welfare services are, however, a very important collaborative partner for the Barnahus, as they often have important information about the child, as they often have been involved with the family before the case is reported. On the day of the interview, the child and the non-abusive parent or another support person come to the Barnahus. The child is then met by a Barnahus advisor who informs the child and parents about what's going to happen during the day. The child and parent waits in a waiting room decorated in nice and bright colors with toys or games available adapted to the child's age. And I will show you a picture of that room on my next slide. The interview is done by a police person with special training in interviewing children. Only the child and the interviewer are present in the interview room during the interview, as you can see on the picture to the right. There is, however, a camera in the room, so those observing the interview from another room can follow the interview on a screen, which you can see in the picture to the left. And those who, according to the regulations, are to observe the interview is the child's lawyer and the defendant's lawyer if the accused has been informed about the interview, and also the Barnahus advisor, representatives from the police and the child welfare services can be present. A police person with prosecutorial authority has the formal responsibility for overseeing the interview. And this was changed in Norway in 2015. Before that time, it was a judge that led the interview. And these also have a pre-meeting before the interview, planning the interview. And during the interview, the interviewer takes a break and to consult the others if there are questions that should be posed to the child. And then the Barnahus advisor would also give advice on if the child seems to be tired and that sort of things. The interview is recorded and functions as evidence in chief if the case later goes to court. So in Norway, the child does not appear in court. After the interview is finished, there's a meeting where the police, the Barnahus advisor, the child's lawyer, and the child's parent or guardian is present, as well as the child welfare services. And this is to decide how the child is best to be followed up and to decide who's responsible for what. Yeah, and here you can see on the left picture the waiting room with the nice colors, and all the Barnahus have rooms like this. They resemble each other, but they look a bit different, but there's a likeness between the Barnahus. Yeah. If the police decides that the child should undergo a forensic medical examination, they formulate a mandate for the prosecution. No, not for the prosecution, but for the pediatrician, of course. And this examination is usually done on the same day as the forensic interview. And you can see the medical examination room in the picture to the right. Yeah, and all the Barnahus have these kinds of examination rooms. But as I will show you later, very few children are forensically examined, only about 20%. Medical examinations without an evidential purpose is very rarely done. And a main reason for few examinations are the lack of doctors with social pediatric competence, which is a challenge in Norway. After the forensic interview and the medical examination, the Barnahus advisors talk to the child and parent and assess the child's need for follow-up. And as I said, short-time psychological follow-up are offered at the Barnahus, but very often the child is followed up by local services where they live. And Lotte will talk more about this. So now I will turn to the two evaluations we have done, and thereafter very briefly mention some of our publications. We have conducted two evaluations of the Norwegian Barnahus model, both commissioned by the Norwegian Police Directorate. One in 2012 and the last one in 2021. And both of the reports on this slide is from the first evaluation, and the one to the left was published by the Norwegian Police University College and focused on the implications of implementation of Barnahus on the police investigation and the forensic medical evidence. And the other one, the green one, the NOVA report, targets more specific the Barnahus operation, its structure, routines, and practices. And both of these reports have summaries in English and are available online. These reports reflect the Barnahus in a phase of early development and might therefore be interesting, especially interesting for you. At this point, the Barnahus staff focused a lot on securing the legitimacy of this new service in the welfare system. They met a lot of skepticism especially from the legal actors who didn't see the point of having to travel to Barnahus to do the forensic interview when they instead could do it on the police station. And lawyers and judges also feared that the Barnahus staff would interfere and reduce the evidential value of the interview. But as I will show you later, the Barnahus succeeded in creating a trust in their role. Another important task in this period was to develop routines and practices for Barnahus work. And I don't have time to go into details about these studies, but the overall results indicated that the Barnahus service represented a more child-friendly and holistic service to victimized children, and also contributed to more integrated services. We did, however, already at this point see possible risks. At this point, the number of forensic interviews were rapidly increasing without the Barnahus receiving enough financial resources. And we were concerned that this might threaten the model's holistic approach with the penal track, taking dominance over the follow-up track. And we also found indications of the Barnahus developing in different directions, partly due to the lack of regulations of the Barnahus operation, which was missing at this point. In 2021, we did a second evaluation using partly the same research design as the first, which made it possible for us to compare the results. And this evaluation showed several positive developments since the first. We found that the operation had become more regulated. In 2015, the use of Barnahus for the forensic interview was made mandatory by law. And in 2016, administrative guidelines regarding the Barnahus operation were issued, which resulted in a more unified practice across the Barnahus. As in the evaluation in 2012, we found that the Barnahus personnel were very experienced and competent, and that they at this point were highly considered among their collaborative partners, including the legal personnel. Children and parents were also very satisfied with the Barnahus services, as they also were in 2012. But what we saw was that the children were even better informed in 2021. We did, however, also find some concerning negative developments. The imbalance between the penal track and the welfare track in the model had increased, with the penal track taking dominance. And this resulted in variations in the quality of the follow-up services for children in different parts of the country. We found that the medical mandate also was poorly integrated in the model. Very few children receive a medical examination in Norwegian Barnahus, despite the regulations now stating that this should be offered to all children at Barnahus as suspected victims of abuse. When medical examinations are offered, this is mainly a forensic medical examination. This was the case in 2012, and it was still a problem in 21, and it still remains to be a problem. So even though there have been many improvements over time in the Norwegian Barnahus, we do see a concerning development regarding maintaining a balance between the penal track and the recovery track in the Norwegian Barnahus, and this balance is needed and necessary for the Barnahus to be able to offer holistic services to victimized children. So at the end of my presentation, I will just show you some of our publications that are available in English. In these publications, you can find more information about the Norwegian Barnahus model and more thorough analysis of some of the developments I have mentioned that have given us reason for concern. And I'm just going to mention here the first publication, which is an edited book. It's the one collaborating against child abuse, exploring the Nordic Barnahus model. This was published in collaboration with our co-editors, Susanna Johansson and Anna Kaldal from Sweden in 2017. And this book gives an overview of the Nordic Barnahus models and the diffusion process in the Nordic countries. The book is open access and can be downloaded without any cost. I've put the link in the slide. And the last publication I will show you is the new edited book that we launched in Sweden, actually just a couple of weeks ago. This book is written in collaboration with colleagues from the UK, Sweden, and Norway, and it's edited by Susanna Johansson, Anna Kaldal, Kari Stefansen, and myself. And in this book, we analyze the Barnahus model from an institutional perspective, and discuss legal, organizational, and professional ethical tensions and challenges related to Barnahus models using empirical examples from different countries. And we also describe and analyze the model's ongoing diffusion in Europe. And as you can see, John Devaney with colleagues have written a chapter about the implementation process related to Barnahus in Scotland. And Jennifer Lavoie with colleagues discusses justice tensions using Northern Ireland as their empirical context. And this book is also available open access and may be downloaded without any costs. Also here, the link on the slide, and the slides will be available for you after the presentation. So thank you for listening to me, and now Lotte will continue with more information regarding the Barnahus work.
Okay, then I will take over. My name is Lotte Andersen. I'm a sociologist with a PhD in social work and social politics. And I work as a senior researcher at Nova with Elisiv here. And I will continue the presentation and talk a little bit about how Barnahus-work is conducted in practice at Barnahus in Norway. And when I do that, I base most of what I am saying on my PhD work, my PhD project, where I study the Barnahus work in practice. And the main methodological study that I used in this project was a method called shadowing, which basically means observing or following professionals while they conduct their work in practice. And I shadowed 6 Barnahus staff members from 3 Barnahus units for 6 weeks. And while doing that, I also observed a number of other staff members indirectly. And I got insight into the work with about 60 Barnahus cases. And when using the term Barnahus work in this presentation, I refer to the everyday work conducted by the permanent Barnahus staff, or advisors, as Elisiv called them earlier, which I may also call social workers during this presentation. And I will start by saying a few words about the staff and their responsibilities before I move on to talk more concretely about practice in Norway. Okay, so the majority of the Barnahus staff in Norwegian Barnahus are highly experienced social workers with long previous working experience from adjacent services, such as the child welfare services and or psychiatric outpatient units for children. And most of them have experience from both these services. They typically have a bachelor degree or a master's degree in social work or in child welfare or similar areas, as well as a number of additional courses in different treatment methods or in target groups and so on. And as Elisiv also said, some of the staff members at each Barnahus unit are psychologists. And as the size of the geographical area, as well as the population that each Barnahus covers, it varies. I think it will be right to say that at the moment there are approximately 1 psychologist per every 5th social worker at each Barnahus unit. And the social workers and the psychologists, they do for the most part have the same, or they do the same tasks and they have the same responsibilities. However, at some Barnahus units, the psychologists have some additional tasks, and this is typically related to quality assurance of psychological screenings, for example. Yep. And as Elisiv have already mentioned, the Barnahus staff have responsibilities related to both the penal track and to the welfare track, or the following up track. They are following up children and their families. And she also told you that since 2015, when the Criminal Procedure Act in Norway was amended, the staff's tasks related to the penal track have been regulated by law. And this law states that the staff shall welcome the child at the Barnahus, they shall participate in consultation meetings, observe the forensic interview, and advise the police interview. It also states that the staff should support and offer treatment to the child and the family, but this is the only thing it says about the follow-up track. And in 2016, we got national guidelines for Barnahus in Norway, and these guidelines they say a bit more about the staff members' responsibilities in the follow-up track. However, as these guidelines have continuously been meant to be amended by governing authorities, the status of the guidelines have been a bit unclear for a while. And they are also currently under revision. Yes, so we do have regulation now, but when the Barnahus model was implemented in Norway in 2007, there were few regulations to guide or monitor the practices of the social workers at the Barnahus. And this meant that it was very much up to the original staff members at Barnahus to pave the way and to design the content of their own professional role or practice. There were, however, some initial reports that provided some key principles for practice. And one of these key principles in these reports was that the Barnahus staff were not to take over tasks or responsibilities from adjunct services or other relevant agencies. And the purpose of this strategy, amongst others, was to avoid conflict and tension around the model. Barnahus was not intended to involve changes in the mandate of other services when it came. And accordingly, in practice, the police were still to be responsible for criminal investigations. The child welfare services were to be responsible for placement of children in need. And the psychiatric outpatient units in Norway were going to be responsible for providing therapy to children with severe trauma symptoms still. Okay, Barnahus work in practice. In one of the chapters in the Barnahus book that Elisiv mentioned at the end of her presentation, I argue that these specific institutional frames, that is the combination of the key principle of not taking over responsibilities from other agencies, together with the flexibility and high degree of professional autonomy that the social workers experienced in the initial phase of the model in Norway, resulted in a distinct social work practice that I in previous articles have conceptualized as interstitial work. And interstitial work can be described as a context-sensitive social work practice that involves identifying and compensating for gaps or shortcomings, interstices, in the system and the relations surrounding each child after a child abuse case has been reported to the police. And this means that if the system, and more specifically the local services or the child's family members, for some reasons are not able to meet the child's needs, the Barnahus social workers intervene in different ways to compensate. And now I will try to illustrate this with a hypothetical Barnahus case. Okay, so the hypothetical case I'm going to use involves a girl around the age of 11 who has been forensically interviewed at the Barnahus. The police reported case involves suspected physical as well as psychological abuse from her biological father. And the father is also suspected of physical and psychological abuse against the girl's mother. And the girl and her mother, they have now moved away from the father, who's still under investigation. The girl and the mother has been back at the Barnahus after the forensic interview for a conversation, and the girl was preliminary screened for trauma symptoms at the Barnahus. And the screening suggests that the girl may suffer from PTSD. In a separate conversation, it became clear that the mother has her own struggles and that she is insecure about how she can approach and support her daughter. And also, the girl's new school teacher, she's also insecure about how she best can approach the girl and if she should facilitate for her in specific ways during the school day. Yeah. So this is the case, and what I'm going to do now is to show how Barnahus social workers may have approached this case differently, depending on the responses or the functioning of local services. So I will describe two scenarios to illustrate the logic behind what I call interstitial work at Barnahus in Norway. In the first version, the girl is referred to the local psychiatric outpatient unit due to her trauma symptoms, and the outpatient unit has capacity to start further screening and or treatment the next week. The social worker in charge of the case, she also knows about a good parenting program in her new hometown, and she happens to know that the professionals who runs this program have competency in possible effects of being a victim of the domestic violence or abuse. And she agrees with the mother to refer her to this program. So, except from a first meeting, and referral of the girl and the mother to different local measures, the social worker also contacts the girl's new school teacher over the phone, and she guides her on possible symptoms the girl may show and suffer from. She guides her on how to approach her in class and how to facilitate in specific situations at school if needed. But after some contact with the school teacher, 2 or 3 phone calls, the case is closed at the Barnahus or from the Barnahus side, except that the social workers have told all of the ones above, the girl, the mother, and the school teacher, that I can recontact her if something happens or if they need to talk or something like that. That is the first version. No, it's not. After the first meeting with the girl and the mother at the Barnahus, there is no more direct work with the girl because local services have relevant measures to offer, and these measures can start up right away. That is a key point. Okay, so then I have a second version, and in this one, the girl is also referred to the psychiatric outpatient unit due to her symptoms, but because of waiting lists in the outpatient unit, they will not be able to start the treatment in about 6 weeks or maybe more. And in this situation, the girl who is suffering is offered following up conversations at the Barnahus in the waiting time before treatment starts. So in other words, the social worker fill in for a system gap or an interstice. And also, this time, there exist no local parenting courses or other measures that could have been beneficial for the mother. At least no one that are sensitive towards possible effects from having suffered domestic abuse. Hence, the social worker decides to follow up the mother in separate conversations at the Barnahus. And she also counsels the school teacher in the same manner that I described when I talked about the first version of the case. Meaning that this time the social worker in charge, she involves more in the case. She does a lot more than in the first version. And it is due to whether or not the local system has available measures that are relevant for what she identifies to be the child and the mother's need at this point. And this is also the key pattern of interstitial work. When the social workers at the Barnahus decide on if and how to intervene in a case, it is the functioning of the child's surroundings that is the most important thing. And as I have tried to illustrate with the cases, interstitial work involves identifying and compensating for gaps on 2 different levels. When there are no available or relevant local measures or waiting lists for relevant measures to start, the Barnahus staff offer follow-up conversations or treatment. Meaning that when there are shortcomings or interstices at the system level, they work directly with the child at the Barnahus. And on the other hand, when someone, either a professional or professionals representing different agencies or the child's caregivers are not currently a resource for the child, it could be if guidance or support is provided, they provide guidance or support. Meaning that they work indirectly for the child through other actors when they identify what we can call interstices at the relational level. Okay, so now at the end, I'm going to address some potentially challenging aspects and some positive aspects of this practice that I have tried to map out. One challenging aspect is that interstitial work, at least if it is to be conducted successfully, it demands a lot of its practitioners. It is a practice that requires continuous attention to details, as well as an overview of the situation of the child as a whole. It also requires high system competency and knowledge and understanding of different agencies' mandates, of their professional logics, and also of their practical reality. And the latter is important, I think. And in an article, I have argued that this requires long experience also from Barnahus-work. It takes time to become good at it. Another challenging aspect may be that for such a practice to evolve, it is necessary with flexible regulation and a high degree of professional autonomy in the initial phase. And the reason for this is that the staff need to experience in practice where in the local systems interstices typically occur. And what to be particularly aware about when meeting and observing professionals representing different agencies with different logics. And for interstitial work to evolve in a professional manner, it will be necessary with a highly skilled and experienced staff that can also pass on knowledge to future generations of practitioners. A last challenging aspect is the possibility of duplication of effort or double work if the staff goes beyond their mandate and involve too much in the cases. Especially if the threshold becomes low for intervening directly with the child. It could, for example, lead to a loss in competence transfer to other services. But on the positive side, the practice functions as a safety net for children in police-reported child abuse cases in Norway. Because when the social workers identify and compensate for interstices at the system level and at a relational level, it ensures that someone is continuously there to look after the child and that those who are there are sensitive towards the needs and struggles of the child. And in the Barnahus evaluation from 2021 that Elisiv talked about, we also saw that central aspects of this practice, such as continuity, holism, as well as direct and indirect work, was described as particularly valued by children and families that had experiences from Barnahus cases. Okay, so to sum up, in the initial phase of Barnahus in Norway, there were few guidelines or regulations monitoring the role of the staff members at Barnahus. And this situation, combined with the key principle of not taking over responsibilities from other agencies, as well as a highly skilled staff with a high degree of professional autonomy, may be said to have led to the practice that I had conceptualized as interstitial work. And interstitial work is a context-sensitive social work practice that involves identifying and compensating for gaps or shortcomings, both at the system and the relational level. And it is valued by and represents a safety net for children and families in police-reported child abuse cases. And that was what I was going to say about Barnahus work in Norway and how it is practiced. And then we want to know if you have any comments or questions. But first I have to quit the presentation because we can't see you.